Hi, I'm Ryo, and I tried winning a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon X only using white Pokemon. There are a ton of fun Pokemon challenges out there, with one of my favorites being Monologues, where encounters are limited to a single type. Since I love making Pokemon games harder than they have to be, I wanted to do something similar, but different. So instead of choosing a type, I wanted to limit my encounters based on colors instead. Since it is really hard to define a Pokemon's color, I decided to go for the ones provided by the Pokédex instead. There are a total of 23 potential evolutionary lines in the Kalos region, but a lot of them are early game encounters on the same route, which limits my total amount of possible Pokemon to around 13. Some of those Pokemon are pretty useless, like a Wingull, which I can't evolve. Others are extremely hard to get, like the 5% Ralts encounter on Route 4. So this definitely wasn't going to be easy. To make it even harder though, I also made this challenge a hardcore Nuzlocke. Aside from the standard rules, like if a Pokemon faints it can no longer be used, and that I can only catch the first valid encounter per route, I'm also not allowing myself to use any healing items in battle, have to play on set mode, and cannot overlevel the next gym leader's ace before the start of the battle. And if I ever black out, I have to restart the run. Before we start, let me know what your favorite white Pokemon is. Aside from Gardevoir, which is my favorite Pokemon and the only reason why I started with white, I would choose a Moga. I mean, look at it, it looks so adorable. I also love doing all kinds of Pokemon challenges, so if you enjoy this content, please consider to like and subscribe. So without further ado, let's see how this one went. This run starts off with me rudely getting woken up by a fledgling before making my way to receive my very first Pokemon. Since my so-called friends don't really have an idea what my favorite color is, none of the starter options are white, and so I just ditch my Fennekin and pick up a Zigzagoon on Route 2 instead. Technically he's also not white, but Lindon is, so I'll just roll with this guy for a while. I named my new dog Powder, and we were ready for our adventure. I then headed into the Santalune Forest right away to pick up my second team member. There are two very similar possible encounters here between Vivillon and Butterfree, so I wasn't really worried about which one I would get. I ended up finding a Scatterbug first and named him Frost. From there it was straight into Santalune City, where Spoopa evolved into a Vivillon while fighting for a new pair of rollerblades and getting access to the gym. Since Icy Snow Pattern Vivillon is a legit white Pokemon, I also decided to leave Powder out of the team until the level cap was high enough to actually being able to use him. Equipped with a deadly butterfly, I had everything I needed to earn my first badge. It was going to be a 2v1, but since super training is a thing in this generation, I was able to fully max out Vivillon's speed and special attack, which should even the odds a bit. Viola starts the battle off with her Surskit as I send in, well, Frost. I don't really have a choice there. Anyway, Frost comes out and I immediately went for a Struggle Bug, which did a big chunk of damage to my opposing Surskit and also lowered its special attack. The Water Skipper then barely touches Vivillon with a bubble in return. Viola then went for a heal, which means I could go for a Tackle to chip away some health again. Then another Struggle Bug kills Surskit and brings out Viola's second and final Pokemon for a mirror match. I tried my luck with another Struggle Bug, but it did barely any damage as my opponent's Vivillon retaliates with an Infestation. This means that Frost will now take 1/8 of his HP in damage for each of the next 5 turns. I now went for a second Struggle Bug, which actually paid off and landed a crit, all while Viola only kept using Infestation. On the next turn I went for a Tackle, which didn't do too much. The Infestation consistently kept lowering Frost HP, but 2 more Struggle Bug were enough to eventually win me my first batch with 5 HP on the board. This was way too close for comfort. There are a lot of tiny story bits coming up my way before I can get to the second gym. The first stop was Professor Sycamore's lab in Luminous City. He wants to give me a Pokemon to use on my journey through Kalos, but not before I defeat him in a battle. Since the level cap for the next gym is almost double the one from the first one, the fights in the upcoming sections are quite easy to beat, so we'll skip them all. I take out the Professor's 3 Kanto starters and I'm forced to pick one. I went for a Charmander because even though I couldn't use it in battle, it would eventually be able to learn Fly and help me travel through Kalos a lot faster in the late game. I then stumble over Lysander in the lab's lobby as this completely normal looking guy tells me about his agenda of wanting to build a better future for Pokemon. Haven't heard that one before. We then also get to meet the Kalos champion Diantha in one of the many cafes of Luminous City. I casually overhear her conversation with Lysander about him wanting to preserve the beauty of the world forever. At least we know who's not the bad guy, right? With the story foundations established, I finally get access to Route 5. There are 2 potential encounters here, but I would much rather have a Pancham for the late game. So I picked up my level 10 Charmander from the Pokemon Center again. I can still not use it in battle, but what I can use it for is to manipulate my encounters in a way that I will always get a Pancham over a Furfrou. With the help of Repel, which is an item that protects me from all encounters with a lower level than the Pokemon leading my party, I can guarantee for Furfrou to never show up, which means that I eventually run into the tiny panda and name him Cream. There are some more tasks to complete, as the Snorlax was blocking my way to continue to the next city. So I had to visit the Perfume Palace to help the owner catch his escaped puppy, and after watching the fireworks with Shauna, I eventually get the item I needed to clear the way. After all of that, I also picked up Vanilla the Esper in Route 6. For now, she had to stay in the box until after the second gym. Since Snorlax was also out of the way, I could now pick up my potential Route 7 encounter. Yet again, there are a few possible Pokemon that I can get here, with Flabébé being my preferred one, since that would secure me a Ralts in Route 2, which I had skipped up to this point. I tried to use Esper to manipulate the encounters, but unfortunately got Salt the Smeargle instead. This also led to me getting Daisy the Flabébé in Route 2. The only thing left to do before finally reaching the second gym was to pick up my Route 8 encounter, which unfortunately turned out to be a Wingull. I caught the fastest one and named him Azure. With that, 15 out of my 23 possible evolution lines and 7 of my 13 encounters were already out of the picture. With the entire early game plot out of the way, and after annihilating some Team Flare grunts in the Glittering Cave, I traveled north to finally reach the second gym in Sillage City. On my way there, Flabébé evolved into a Floette, so I can now actually stop mispronouncing this poor thing's name. Oh, and I also got my Linoone as well. Since the early game was so easy to beat, I decided to take a page out of Flygon HG's book and limit my Pokemon for key battles to the team size of my opponents. I was ready to take on Grant. His team might not look too scary, but they both definitely pack some punch. Tyrant's high attack combined with the strong draw ability and Amora's Refrigerate stat boosted takedowns can easily KO a lot of my Pokemon. I ended up bringing Linoone and Pancham to this fight. Let's take on the second gym. Grant starts the battle off with his Amora as I send in Pancham. Karate Chop wasn't guaranteed to kill her, and a freeze from Aura Beam or a para from Thunder Wave could cause some serious trouble. Luckily, Pancham outspeeds and one-shots with a 4 times effective attack. That leaves Grant with only his Tyrant left. Given my typing, he will always go for a Stomp instead of a stat-boosted Rock Tomb or a Strong Jaw-boosted Bite, which reduces the otherwise scary Tyrant's damage output drastically. I went for another Karate Chop, but Grant outspeeds me this time around and flinches my Panda with the predicted Stomp. I then tried my luck again, but got flinched once more. It's only like a 30% chance to flinch, but yeah, go ahead and hit the roll every single time, Grant. The upside is that during all of this, his Baby Dino takes consistent chip damage by hitting into my Rocky Helmet. I was now in crit range, but decided to test my luck as another Stomp miraculously doesn't flinch, and due to the chip damage, Cream was able to finish the fight with another Karate Chop. That's the second gym down. I could now pick up this Flying Squirrel in Route 10 and named her Coconut. There's a pretty scary fight against Gym Leader Corinna coming up, as she has 2 fully evolved Lucario with Power Punch and Sword Stance, but Frost quad resists fighting type moves and managed to do decent amount of damage with Psybeam, so the battle was over in no time. After heading through the Reflection Cave, I eventually arrived in Shellar City, where it was time for my first rival battle against Callum in the Tower of Mastery. Since he only has 3 Pokemon, I also could only bring 3 of my own and chose Vivillon, Floette, and Linoone. Callum leads with Meowstic as I send in Frost. I wasn't expecting to deal any damage turn 1 as it had Fake Out, but the AI for some reason decided to opt for Light Screen instead. This allowed me to get decent amount of damage in with a Struggle Bug before the screen was up. I now had to stall some turns and so went for a Stun Spore. After taking some Psybeams, I went for a Draining Kiss before ultimately picking up the KO with a Struggle Bug right as Light Screen ran out. This brings out Absol next, but Frost sends it right back to his Pokeball with a single attack. Callum's Ace Frogadier was out third, and so I switched into Floette to tank the incoming Water Pulse due to her high special defense. Daisy then gets hit by a Quick Attack and brings Frogadier down to low health with a Magical Leaf. I wasn't really sure if a crit Water Pulse would kill there, so I switched into Linoone. After taking 2 Quick Attacks, a Headbutt was enough to pick up the kill on Frogadier and win the battle. I was now able to head to the gym and take on Corinna and her Fighting-type Pokemon for a second time. But with Floette, Vivillon, and Emolga, I wasn't really worried about that too much. After hunting down every single gym trainer on my roller skates, it was time to battle. I sent in Frost against her Mienfoo. He tanks the initial Fake Out and takes my rival's lead Pokemon right down to the red. Mienfoo then went for a Power Punch, which barely left a scratch. Corinna then went for a Hyper Potion, as one of my Draining Kisses brings her Pokemon right back down to the red. After repeating the cycle once more, Corinna was now out of healing items, which allowed me to take Mienfoo out with a final Draining Kiss. Machoke was out next, and thanks to a super effective Psybeam, immediately left the battlefield again. There was only Hawlucha left, but since it doesn't have any stat-boosted flying-type moves, it was safe to stay in. I got some free damage in as it only went for a Hone Claws. On the next turn, Frost survived the incoming critical hit Flying Press and was able to finish the battle with a final Psybeam. The defeat didn't sit too well with the young gym leader, and so Corinna wants a third rematch atop of the Tower of Mastery. Since I'm obviously a much better trainer, one of her Lucario also decided that it's on my team now. But since it isn't white, I just declined the offer and walked away. I'm sorry, it's not me, it's you. You're blue. Of course, a Pokemon X playthrough wouldn't be complete without talking to the German ace trainer to be enlightened by her words of wisdom once again. Callum then hands me the HM for Surf, and after hunting for a Pachirisu for a solid 40 minutes, I finally found the little squirrel and named him Salt as well. That wasn't really on purpose, but when I caught Smeargle, I was salty that I couldn't have my favorite Pokemon for this run, and then it took me so long to catch Pachirisu, which also made me salty, so salt it is for both. I then took one of the Skidoos for a ride to pick up hidden leftovers and a shiny stone. Did you know that you can also use it to skip every single trainer of this route? This now brings me all the way to Coumarine City. There is another rival fight right before the gym, but Callum's team doesn't change at all compared to the last one, and so it's another quick sweep. Before heading into the next challenge, I evolved Cream into Pangoro, using a Houndour I caught back at Route 10. I brought the Panda, together with Emolga and Vivillon, to take on leader Ramos. I lead the battle with Coconut into his Jump Bluff. It's important to know that Emolga learns Acrobatics right before the level cap, which does double damage if my Flying Squirrel doesn't hold an item. So this just clean one-shots Ramos' first Pokemon. He then sends in Gogot next, which survives another Acrobatics in the yellow and retaliates with a hard takedown. This also activates Emolga's static ability right before it takes enough recoil damage to now be in healing range. On the next turn, Ramos throws the expected Hyper Potion at the Grassy Goat, but since I outspeed, 2 more Acrobatics were enough to take it out. Last was Weeping Bell, but it quickly follows suit. Ramos is all the way up there for the easiest gym of this run so far. With that out of the way, I now use the Shiny Stone from earlier to evolve Floette into a Floorgrass. There recently were a bunch of blackouts in Luminous City, and so the next goal was the Kalos Power Plant to check out the situation. I quickly cleared out the Gauntlet of Grunts and defeated Team Flare lead scientist Aliana. They only had a bunch of Dark and Poison type Pokemon, so Vanilla and Cream handled most of it on their own. After saving the power plant, I was cleared to head back to Luminous City. I roamed around for a while and got a fresh haircut and a new hat, which is all just to say that I was stalling because I had no idea how to safely beat Clement in the upcoming Electric type gym. Since nothing clears your head up more than buying a bunch of overpriced clothes, I finally came up with a plan. It was pretty foolproof, and the only way it could fail was if someone accidentally would lose a key component for the battle. An example for said strategy-ruining accident would be losing Emolga to Ace Trainer Rico and his Ampharos by not knowing it had Power Gem. I eventually do make it to the top of the gym, and since my carefully constructed plan was somehow ruined, I brought Wingull as Death Fodder to be able to safely switch between Mons if necessary. Let's see how this one turns out. Clement leads the battle with his own Emolga just to taunt me as I send in Cream. He holds a Heartstone here because otherwise my Rock Tomb would be way too big of a range to kill. After tanking a hard-hitting Acrobatics, it luckily connects and hits the range to one-shot the Flying Mouse. 1 down. Next up was Magneton, which sets up an electric terrain and goes down to 1 HP after surviving a Vital Throw due to its sturdy ability. Clement then wastes all of his potions, while I continuously bring it back down to low health. But then, right before I can knock it out, the Magnet hits Cream for way too much damage and picks up the KO instead. When playing through this, I was so sure I would survive at least a non-critical hit attack. I couldn't figure out what I had done wrong in my calculations. It was electric terrain. I forgot it boosts electric type attacks by 50%. Anyway, with one of my strongest team members down, I had to switch into Azure to revenge kill with a quick attack. This also marks the final turn of electric terrain. At least Azure got to do something of value before taking one for the team and falling to a Thunderbolt from Clement's ace Heliolisk. I was now also down to my last Pokemon. Fortunately, Powder was faster and managed to dodge a Thunderbolt crit, which means 2 more dig were enough to earn me a very painful 5th batch. After losing some of my best team members and with the next encounter being far out of reach, I had to be really careful now. I threw Pachirisu and Smeargle onto the team and continued my journey towards Laver City for the 6th batch. Right outside of Luminous City, I ran into my friends and defeated Callum for a 3rd time in a row without a problem. This battle was much easier than the previous one, as Greninja's Dark type makes it vulnerable to Frost's Bug Buzz, which means I didn't even have to switch Pokemon to defeat him. The question is, if we always fight, are we really friends? How long until the competitive nature of our friendship tears the very thread that holds us together apart, and all that is left is just a mere memory of the times where we were free of the burden of continuously fighting for who is the superior trainer? Anyway, after visiting the haunted house, I finally arrived at my destination. I immediately spent my well-earned money on a new dress to match the next gym's theme. With that, there was nothing left to do but to take on Valerie, which by the way, has to be one of the coolest looking gym leaders out there. I had to use some dirty tactics to beat her though, so don't expect too much from this one. Powder was up first against her Mawile. I immediately went for a dig and dodged the incoming crunch. After taking quite some damage, Mawile luckily only went for an iron defense, and so I was able to take it out unscathed. Next came Mr. Mime, and I switched into Floorgrass on a Psychic. Leftover recovered some of my health as I went for a Toxic. This now badly poisons Mr. Mime while it sets up a light screen. From there, all I had to do was to use a combination of Magical Leaf and Protect to slowly whittle it down while staying completely healthy due to Wish and leftover recovery. The Mime eventually falls, and Daisy's high special defense allowed her to Toxic Stall Valerie's Ace Sylveon as well. Not the most exciting way to do it, but the win is a win, and I really couldn't afford losing more team members, so I would rather play it safe. Team Flare was doing some shady stuff in the Pokeball factory in town, so I headed there immediately. The two admins leading the operation only had one Pokemon each, so I made quick work of them together with Callum. This now opens up the final section of the Kalos region and allows me to get my last few encounters for the run. The first Pokemon on the list was Ghost the Litwick, which I picked up in the Lost Hotel. I only got her for completion purposes as she was not allowed to evolve and is pretty useless at this point in the game. I then tried to fish for a Regenerator Fungus in Route 15, but got Effect Spore instead. The one I found on Route 16 was also Effect Spore, but since it was way too good of a mon to miss out on right now, I picked it up instead of going for the third try in the Pokemon Village much later in the game. I had to resist my primal instinct of naming this little guy Sussy and went for a name that fits the theme instead, Peppermint. If you already figured out what the theme is, let me know in the comments down below. I also got Titan the Bear Tick while taking care of Team Flare Grunts harassing the Abomasnow in the Frost Cavern. With that, the path to the Abomasnow road opened up where I got Vivid the Snower, which is actually my final encounter for the run. With these new Pokemon, I was more than ready to head into Anister City where Callum was waiting for another rival battle, which also happened to be my trademark misplay of the run. I did some preparations and headed straight into the fight. Frost has been a solid lead into Meowstic so far, so I sent him out and tried to set up a Quiver Dance, but got faked out right away. I then go for the setup move again, which raises my special attack, special defense and speed by one stage. After tanking a Psychic and setting up once more, I went for a Draining Kiss, but Meowstic retaliates with a Shadow Ball. After some back and forth, the cat finally goes down. I now realize how silly my strategy of setting up was, because instead of going for an Absol, Callum sends out his Flareon, which was now threatening to kill with a super effective Lava Plume. This basically ruins my whole setup strategy, because I had no way of killing this thing, and so I had to switch into Powder to tank the incoming attack. It immediately puts my little guy below half health, and so I needed to switch out once again. Florgrass tanked the incoming bite quite well, and healed back almost all of the damage with leftovers recovery. I went for a Dazzling Gleam to see how much damage I would do, but unfortunately only managed to barely leave a dent as another Lava Plume burns Daisy. After some quick attack damage, I went for another Dazzling Gleam, bringing Flareon below half health. Burn continuously chipped away on Daisy's health, so I had to be really careful here. I decided to stay in, as the rest of my team would most likely just die on the switch. Another quick attack brought Florgrass down to kill range, as a Dazzling Gleam did the same to my rival's Flareon. Not wanting to risk my best team member and hoping for another quick attack, I now switched her out into Vanilla, but Callum had other plans and immediately takes her to half health with a Lava Plume. Meowstic then managed to eventually take Flareon out with a Psychic after taking some quick attack damage. This isn't looking great so far. Third was Greninja. Vanilla had no way of dealing damage to it, and so I was forced to switch into Vivillon to hopefully save me from my mistakes. Unfortunately, the Ninja Frog was way too fast and killed Frost with a Dark Pulse Water Shuriken combo. While I just lost one of the best Pokemon of the run, I had to press on and use this opportunity to freely switch into Daisy. Luckily, she was able to one-shot Greninja and the final Absol with a Dazzling Gleam each. Such mistakes barely go unpunished in Nuzlocke, and while I was able to take out Olympia, I still lost the run not far down the line in the Team Flare headquarters. So I'll just save you some time and cut directly to the reset. I could have gone with Froakie over Fennekin as my starter this time around, which would ultimately result in Callum having a Vaporeon and a Chestnut. Vivillon could easily one-shot both of them after setting up, but I didn't feel like the Pokemon I had were the problem. It was the way I handled mine instead. So I went for the same route and chose Fennekin as my starter again. The first playthrough didn't really go as smoothly after the fourth gym, and so I put in some time to properly plan my encounters. Frost was an insanely good Pokemon for most parts of the run, and aside from the final fight against my rival, carried battles almost all on his own. And do you know what's better than one fast and scary bug? Two fast and scary bugs. So I reset my next attempt, and soon enough had a Scatterbug instead of a Zigzagoon as my first Pokemon. This allowed me to get a guaranteed Caterpie in the Santaloon Forest. Honeydew also had the Compound Eyes ability, which increased the accuracy of all of his moves by 30%. Combined with a White Lens, which I can get in Luminous City, this makes the Sleep Powder he learns at level 12 an almost guaranteed and fast way of putting my opponents to sleep. Most of my encounters stayed pretty much the same, but I made sure to use the Repel strategy to avoid getting a useless horde of Wingulls in Route 8 and got Retro the Zangoose instead. Retro was an extremely good help for some of the harder sections and allowed me to get a Deathless Clement and a much more elegant Valerie fight. After accidentally killing my Snow Air encounter and having to waste my Master Ball on Titan because that thing almost wiped my entire team, I made it back to Anister City without losing a single team member and took care of my rival in no time. I should also mention that I picked up the male character now just to switch things up a bit, so my rival will now be Serena instead. It was now time to earn my last badge before entering late game. I had a ton of options to take on a Psychic type gym, but ultimately ended up bringing Butterfree, as well as the now alive Pangoro and Emolga. Olympia leads with Sigilyph, and I lead with Cream. The level cap is a bit weird here, as her ace is 4 levels higher than her weakest Pokemon, but I'll take the extra stats. Sigilyph outspeeds and immediately sets up a Reflect. I went for a Crunch, which despite doing 50% less damage, still managed to bring my opponent below half health. After taking an alarming amount of damage from an Air Slash, Pangoro was able to take out Olympia's first Pokemon with a Crunch, which now brings in Slowking. It doesn't really have a way of hitting me for neutral damage, so I decided to stay in. I went for another Crunch, as Slowking only sets up with a Calm Mind. Since I outspeed, a third Chomp picked up a clean kill, which brings Olympia down to her last Pokemon. Meowstic only had Fake Out or Calm Mind as moves to choose from, so it was safe for me to switch into Honeydew. He tanked the predicted Fake Out, and does what he does best and puts the cat to sleep. That wasn't really necessary, but I didn't want to get surprised by any wrong damage calculations again. With Meowstic cozily napping on the battlefield, I went for a Buck Buzz, which cleanly takes it out and wins me an easy 7th badge. Lysander now tells everyone in Kalos that he was part of Team Flare all along. He also casually, publicly announces his plan of reviving the ultimate weapon to eliminate everyone on the planet. Oh no, he is the bad guy? It was time to head over to Lysander's cafe in the heart of Luminous City. I have to fight all of the Team Flare admins and Lysander himself, but my team was well prepared to deal with that. Well, mostly. I led Retro into a back-to-back battle versus Kaliosa and Preoni, and in a moment of not paying attention, let her go down to a Fake Out and Sucker Punch combo from Liepard. She didn't have much screen time in this story, but she definitely was one of my favorites to play with. After fighting almost every single Flare employee, I stumbled over Lysander holding a 3,000-year-old man who built the ultimate weapon captive in his basement. Well, after taking care of the final admin, I get the chance to either disable the ultimate weapon by pressing the red button, or do nothing by pressing the blue one. But then the weapon activates anyway, which just goes to show that Team Flare has to be stopped. Why would they lie about what the button does? Anyway, after throwing a little fit in the lab, I headed straight to Geosenge Town to stop the destruction of the planet. I have to fight Lysander multiple times in a row now, but we'll skip ahead to the part where he was holding the God of Life captive in his basement to power the ultimate weapon. This guy has a lot of basements and a lot of things inside of it. After fighting some more grunts and admins, I had to fight Xerneas. The thing is, I was going to bring 4 Pokemon to this battle to match Lysander's final team, which I had to take on right after. But the game requires you to actually catch Xerneas before being able to continue. So I was kind of stuck in a loop to trying to catch this thing for a while, and since I really didn't want to lose to a deer, I brought the full squad. This doesn't really make the final battle against the Team Flare leader easier though. It took me so long for Xerneas to stay in the ball that Lysander had to leave in the middle of a Spider-Man cosplay contest. And since we were about to stop his plans of destroying the world, it was time for a final battle. He sends in his Mienshao as I bring in Peppermint because it was my lead versus Xerneas. I had to swap him out into Daisy right away as she loses 30% of her health to an Acrobatics. The level cap for the next gym allowed me to be severely overleveled here, and so I was guaranteed to outspeed Lysander's entire team. I went for a Calm Mind. Instead of attacking, Mienshao does the exact same with Sword Stance. I was now at a much higher risk of getting killed, and so I went for a Dazzling Gleam immediately, which cleanly sweeps my opponent's first Pokemon off the field. Honchkrow quickly follows the same fate, and Lysander sends in his Pyroar. It has literally no way of killing me, and so I set up 2 more Calm Minds, while Leftover healed all the damage from the incoming Fire Blasts. After being sure that I had enough damage to deal with Lysander's ace, 2 more Dazzling Gleam were enough to take the Lion out, which now brings in Gyarados. It always wants to Mega Evolve here, which activates my trap card and switches its flying type into a dark type. This allows me to deal super effective damage, and since I always outspeed, a final Dazzling Gleam one-shots the shrimp and wins the battle. Lysander was so mad that he had lost the cosplay competition and the battle that he decided to just blow him and all of his employees up with the ultimate weapon, I guess. Daisy carried me through the entirety of the late game content almost all on her own, and because of that, unfortunately overleveled and had to stay in the box until I got my 8th badge. The rest of the game doesn't have too much important story, so it's mostly a series of battles from here on out. Team Flare was defeated and the world was safe once again. That usually means that it's time to earn my final gym badge, but before being able to head there, the infamous Rival Bridge Gauntlet was waiting for me. First up was Shauna and her Delcatty, and since the battles were back to back, I had to lead Coconut into it. You'll see in a moment why. I switched him to Honeydew right away. He only gets his attack lowered by a charm and then immediately puts the cat to sleep. It was now safe to switch into Beartick to take the cat out with a single Icicle Crush. The reason why it had to be Beartic to finish Delcatty is because I needed him to be on the field in case Shauna would bring in Goodra next. But she sends in her Chestnut instead, so I immediately switched into Peppermint to shrug off the incoming Brick Break. After hitting a Toxic, I switched into Honeydew, who easily shrugs off another Brick Break. Then a Bug Buzz brings Chestnut down to the yellow, as the Spiky Boy tries to retaliate with a Seed Bomb. Poison now brings it down to literally 1 HP, and so I could finally switch back into Titan. He takes more damage from a Seed Bomb than I had anticipated. I was now in a good position to one-shot Shauna's Goodra with a last Icicle Crush, as long as I don't miss, which I surprisingly don't. There is no healing between the first 2 of the 3 battles, and so I immediately get challenged by Tierno. He leads the battle with Talonflame, which is why Molga had to be first in the party. One Thunderbolt was enough to secure me a clean one-shot, which then brings in Crawdont. I brought in Amoonguss to deal with the massive crab, as it sets up a Sword Stance on the switch. On the next turn, Tierno decides that +2 wasn't enough attack and went for another Sword Stance, as a single Giga Drain sends Crawdont back to his Pokeball. This brings in Roserade last. After some unfortunate crits and switches, I eventually brought out Butterfree to one-shot Roserade with a Bug Buzz. The next and last rival battle was against Trevor. His Raichu was up first and I immediately anchored into Slam. This allowed me to freely switch into Honeydew to tank said Slam and put the mouse to sleep. I then used the free switch to bring in Titan. On the next turn, Raichu unfortunately wakes up and hits a Thunderbolt before falling to a Dig right after. Since that is a contact move, it also caused Titan to get paralyzed due to Raichu's static ability. That wasn't too great because the following Aerodactyl hits a Supersonic and I was now not only at risk of getting fully paralyzed, but also of hitting myself in confusion. Luckily, Titan doesn't know what a Paraflinch strategy is and takes the Ancient Bird out with a single Icicle Crush. Last was Floorgrass, but Peppermint walls the flower and ends the rival gauntlet with a clean Toxic Stall. With that, I had everything I needed to take on Wolfric. That is, after getting stuck in the winding woods on my way to the Pokemon shelter and taking way too long to solve this Rubik's Cube of a gym puzzle. Aside from Beartic, I don't really have anything to properly tank and damage Ice types. Let's see if I can make it through this without losing any Pokemon. Abomasnow is up first and immediately sets up Hail due to its Snow Warning ability. I lead the battle with Cream and set up a Bulk Up before tanking a Soft Energy Ball. With my now boosted stats, I was able to one-shot Abomasnow with a Sky Uppercut. The following Crogonal immediately went for a Confuse Ray, and Pangoro hits itself in confusion. Since the Hail was consistently chipping away from its health, it was now way too low to do anything for the remainder of the battle. My only option was to switch into Beartic to somehow bring it back. It easily takes an Ice Beam on the switch, and after getting confused by a Crogonal, hits itself in confusion as well. My team really just has to stop doing that. On the next turn, a super effective Flash Cannon brings Titan down to the yellow as it punches itself into the red. With both of my other Pokemon almost dead, I had to bring out Honeydew. This was extremely dangerous since the AI most likely sees a kill with both Ice Beam and Flash Cannon, and depending on what it goes for, Butterfree could just die and the run would be over right there. But fortune favors the fools, they say, and Honeydew only gets hit by a Flash Cannon and takes it fairly well. The only reason why I brought him, by the way, is because he was the only Pokemon that could outspeed Crogonal and put it to sleep in case something went south. So yeah, here he is, doing his job. With the Hexagon asleep, I brought Pangoro back in to finish it off with a Sky Uppercut. There was only Avalugg left. It is much slower than Pangoro, so I could at least get one hit in before letting my trusted companion go down. But Wolfric somehow decided that setting up with Curse makes a lot more sense here, and so my Panda was able to survive and end the battle. That's it, all of the 8 gyms are completed. The only thing left to do before the Elite Four was one final battle against my rival. I put Daisy back on the team and made my way through Victory Road. It was time to take on Serena, who had already managed to end my run before. As always, Meowstic was up first, I tanked the Fake Out and put it to sleep. With the kitty now cozily napping on the battlefield, I went for a Bug Buzz to immediately take it out instead of trying to go for some setup shenanigans like last time. She then sends in Greninja over Flareon. Even though Greninja is weak to bug type attacks, I don't know, the AI sometimes does some weird stuff. An Ice Beam would clearly kill here, so I switched into Daisy to tank the hit. After shrugging off another Ice Beam and dodging the freeze, she retaliates with a Dazzling Gleam, ending the Froggo's career right there. Next was Flareon, so I went for Calm Mind to boost my defenses as it manages to burn me with a Lava Plume. It went for a quick attack as I boosted my stats once again with the hope of just one-shotting on the next turn. That didn't work out too well though, as another quick attack brings Daisy down to 40 HP and Dazzling Gleam doesn't even bring Flareon to half. My boosted special defense made it very unlikely that it would go for a Lava Plume here, so it was safe for me to switch back into Butterfree and put the Fire Pup to sleep. I then switched into Pangoro as Flareon gets the first turn Wake Up and hits a Lava Plume. It barely does any damage and luckily doesn't burn, so on the next turn I outspeed and Cream takes down my rival's third Pokemon. Altaria was up next, so I switched into Peppermint to poison the Cotton Dragon with Toxic. After stalling it out, it eventually goes down, which brings out Serena's Absol last, but it quickly follows Altaria's footsteps, or claw steps. I don't know how Pokemon feet work. With Serena down, the final obstacle before the Pokemon League was defeated. I managed to make it all the way to the Elite Four only using white Pokemon. But the run wasn't over yet. The hardest challenge was yet to come. It took me a while to figure out which Pokemon I should bring. I wasn't really worried about Seabolt or Dresna, but Wikstrom's Steel types and Melva's Fire types could become a big issue. After a while, I managed to come up with a strategy for each of them, and I was ready for the end. I brought Daisy, Peppermint, Coconut, Titan, Cream, and Honeydew all leveled to 64 to match the Elite Four highest Pokemon. I also decided to bring 6 Pokemon to match the Champions team size instead of the one of the Elite Four. With the team ready to go, I entered the chambers and the doors locked behind me. There was no going back now. Dresna and the Dragon types were definitely one of the easier battles, so she was up first. She leads the battle with Dragalge, which is the only reason why Daisy can't simply sweep through her. So I lead the battle with Titan to take care of the Seahorse with an Icicle Crush. He was holding the White Lance there, so that was very unlikely to miss. This baited in Noivern next, and I swapped in Daisy on a Flamethrower, which burns her again. She really has to stop getting burnt on switch-ins. After tanking an Air Slash, a Pixie Plate boosted Dazzling Gleam took care of the Bat, the following Altaria, and Dresna's final Draudigon. Second was Seabolt and his water types. He leads the battle with Clawitzer, and if we have learned one thing, then that Daisy walls any special attacker with ease. On my first turn, I already misplayed and accidentally clicked Dazzling Gleam over Calm Mind. A critical hit from my side here would have made this run a lot harder. Fortunately, it was only a regular hit, as Clawitzer lands the crit on Water Pulse instead. As a cherry on top, he also gets the confusion as well. Daisy then decided to not repeat the Snowbell City Gym accident and sets up a Calm Mind and Wish, all while staying fairly healthy. She then finally completely snaps out of confusion and sets up another Calm Mind. After tanking a Water Pulse, Wish and the leftover recovery, healed my flower almost back to full. Technically my setup was complete, but I went for a final Calm Mind to increase my odds of one-shotting Seabolt's Gyarados. Clawitzer hits another critical Water Pulse, which forces me to set up another Wish. After what has to be an eternity of setting up, one Energy Ball removes the Shrimp and Daisy was back to almost full HP. Second came in Gyarados, but I outspeed and a Dazzling Gleam one-shots the 1 HP. Thankfully, it only went for a Dragon Dance. Then Daisy crits the Gyarados and one-shots the Starmie and Barbaracle with some more Energy Balls. Third was Melva, and in order to beat her, I had to risk my trusted Butterfly. Luckily, Honeydew powers through and tanks a hard-hitting Flamethrower before sending the Lioness to the napping corner. All of this was necessary, so I could now set up Tailwind, which doubles the speed of my team for the next 5 turns. Pyroar luckily stays asleep, allowing Honeydew to survive this mess, as it was now time to bring in Cream. A Sky Uppercut takes care of Pyroar, which then brings in Talonflame. It threatens to one-shot with a Brave Bird, but since I outspeed due to Tailwind, Cream was able to play the Uno reverse card and get the one-shot with Rock Tomb instead. Next was Torkoal, but it just goes down to 2 Earthquakes. Tailwind had run out by now, so Melva's final Pokemon, Chandelure, managed to confuse Cream, but he breaks through, and a Crunch was all it took to bring it home. The final obstacle was Wikstrom, and he was definitely going to be the hardest and riskiest of them all. He leads the battle with Klefki as I bring in Cream. The Panda had to hold a Soft Sand to guarantee me the kill with an Earthquake, which worked out just fine. Wikstrom now brings in Aegislash, and while this thing would be a clean kill with a Crunch in a later generation, Steel unfortunately still resists Dark-type moves in this game. I went for an attack anyway, as the Possessed Sword switched into defensive as well. Luckily, instead of going for a King's Shield and lowering my attack, he went for a Sacred Sword. Pangoro managed to dodge the crit and hangs on with 36 HP, which allowed him to take Aegislash out instead. Probopass was out third, and since Cream was way too low to do anything, I had to swap into Peppermint. This actually brings me to my first PP stalled in a Nuzlocke ever, as I had to run Probopass out of Flash Cannon to be able to safely switch into Daisy. After a solid 15 minutes of spamming Protect, Spore, and Giga Drain, I was finally able to switch her in. I then got lucky again, as she was able to set up 3 Calm Mind before Probopass wakes up and barely leaves a mark with Power Gem. I then set up 3 more Calm Minds to max out my special attack, as leftovers basically kept me at full HP the entire time. An Energy Ball takes Probopass out and brings in Wikstrom's biggest threat to my team. But since she is a monster of a Pokemon, Daisy outspeeds to hit a +6 Dazzling Gleam, which despite not being super effective, takes Wikstrom's Scissor out in 1 hit. With that, I managed to beat all of the Elite Four, and there was only the champion left to beat. With our team of White Knights in shining armor, we enter the hall and start the final battle against the Yantha. First up was Hawlucha, and this is what Emolga has been waiting for in the back for the last 4 battles. With a single Thunderbolt, she fulfills her final task, takes out Hawlucha, and paves the way for the rest of the team. Next up was Tyrant, and in an attempt to deal as much damage as she could, Coconut fires off her last Thunderbolt of the run for a huge chunk of damage before going down to a single head smash. But her sacrifice wasn't going to be in vain. She even left me a gift by paralyzing the T-Rex with her static ability, which allowed me to send in Cream next and avenge his fallen friend with a single scalp cut after a full restore. Goodra was out third, and despite being at risk of losing a Mon here, I decided to stay in and deal as much damage as I could. Cream then managed to bring the Slug Dragon down to a sliver as it retaliates with a Focus Blast. He hangs on, and after wasting another one of the Antha's full restores, takes Goodra out with another attack. The champion sends in Aurora's next, but a quad-effective Scalper Cut just sends it straight back to where it came from. Her 5th Pokemon was Gourgeist. One Crunch barely missed out on the kill as Cream takes a Seed Bump like a champ and stays on the battlefield with 4 HP left. I was worried about a priority Shadow Sneak here, but the champion had other plans. After healing the Pumpkin, another Crunch takes it out and leaves the Antha with only her ace left. Not only does Gardevoir have a super effective move against almost every single member of my team, it was also going to Mega Evolve, which raises its stats drastically. So that was it for our little panda as Gardevoir Mega Evolves and sends him right back to his Pokeball. With only 4 Pokemon left, I had to somehow find a way to take this beast out. I switched into Daisy first with the hope that she would just shrug off all of Gardevoir's attack. A Dazzling Gleam did a decent amount of damage, but so did my opponent's Moonblast. I went for another Dazzling Gleam, bringing Gardevoir down to healing range as another Moonblast gets the special attack drop on Daisy. So after watching Gardevoir going back to full thanks to a full restore, I went for another Dazzling Gleam, which barely did any damage. I needed to somehow reset her attack drop, and so I went into Titan, who went down to 2 attacks without being able to touch her opponent at all. I wanted to keep Daisy as my last resort, and so I brought out Peppermint. After the initial Protect to scout what move Gardevoir would opt for, I had to challenge luck once again as an incoming Psychic doesn't crit and allows me to put the Antha's ace to sleep with Spore. Thankfully Gardevoir stays asleep, and with that 2 more Sludge Bomb were enough to take it out and win the run. And that's it. I somehow managed to beat Pokemon X only using white Pokemon. I used a lot of different mons that I usually would never try out, so I had a ton of fun during this challenge. I'm already planning out my next Monocolor Nuzlocke, so make sure to leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on that one. Feel free to also check out this video, where I tried to beat Pokemon Alpha Sapphire with only 1 red, blue and green Pokemon. Thanks for watching.